Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Stockbrokers Zambia LuSE 30th Anniversary Podcast. On this episode today, our guest is Clare Mukolwe. Clare has the rare distinction of being amongst the first group of persons selected and specifically trained to serve as the first licensed brokers in Zambia at the launch of the LuSE in February 1994. She joined Kavmont Securities in 1994, which later transformed into Stockbrokers Zambia in 2003. In 2004, Clare moved to the USA to pursue studies and subsequently graduated with a bachelor's degree in business administration and an MBA. Clare now lives in New York and remains passionate about the Lusaka Stock Exchange. Welcome to the podcast, Clare. Without further ado, let's get started.
So we can start with, how can Zambians abroad invest in the Lusaka Stock Exchange?
I think, in my opinion, really, they just need to choose a broker, and they can do this by going to the stock exchange website. And of course, having worked with Stockbrokers Zambia, one of the founding members of the exchange, I would encourage them to pick Stockbrokers Zambia. The good thing about going to the LuSE website is that they are able to get all the basic information that they need. The frequently asked questions are also covered. So it's pretty much, just going to the website and trying to see which broker they'd like to work with, and then also going from there and picking a broker of their choice and then connecting directly with the broker of their choice. And from then on, when they do that, they open an account with their selected stockbroking firm. Take time to understand what investment options are. Some of the investment options that are available are things like, primarily, I would say, shares in equity investments. But there are also options to invest in government bonds and treasury bills and exchange traded funds. They can discuss all those details with their selected broker, corporate bonds as well. The exchange does a very good job of monitoring the performance of stock prices. So at the end of each day, clients are provided with the trading activity at the end of what we call a daily market summary, and also at the end of each week, what's referred to as a weekly market summary. They can also consider one of the advantages with coming in, invest on the exchange is also currency exchange rates. For instance, there are some investments that are primarily designated in dollars. For instance, what's referred to now as the diaspora bond, issued in foreign currency to help reduce exchange rate risks, making it attractive for Zambians in diaspora. And then also they get, some benefit in terms of tax considerations as well. And they can also try to sort of pretty much, take advantage of the investment opportunities that are available in a quite young market, which is only 30 years old. If they do it now, they're actually setting themselves up for, very good returns in the long term, so to say. That's my opinion.
Then on to the next question of, how do Zambians abroad transfer funds for investment?
The primary option for funds transfer really is bank wire transfers, but then, of course, those involve a bank transfer fee. So that can be addressed by also considering other, payment platforms like some people use PayPal, some people use WorldRemit and Remitly, international payment platforms. And then we also have the international transfer platforms like Western Union that can also be used at a small fee as well, but it's not as high as what banks ordinarily charge for their transfers. And then nowadays, the mobile form of transferring funds has become quite popular. I've noticed that even institutions in Zambia have actually been collecting their statutory payments through mobile transfers as well. So, it seems pretty safe, and it's one way that as long as the stockbroking firm allows it and has a designated mobile number that these prospective investors can use, that's one way to transfer funds at a minimal cost as well.
Are there any initiatives encouraging diaspora investment in Zambia?
Actually, there has been one big one that has taken off quite well in terms of encouraging Zambians to abroad Zambians abroad in diaspora to invest in treasury bills and government bonds. That has been quite successful. But in terms of investment in shares, that's something that needs to be worked on. But I think it has more to do with the mindset, helping people to understand the benefits of investing in shares. I think the market was very well set up by the initial leaders, like first Secretary-in-Chief of the Exchange Securities and Exchange Commission was Mr. Mumbaka Pumpa, and they worked in conjunction with a foreign consultant, Mr. David Lister, who was working to groom Mr. Mate as first general manager of the stock exchange. They did a very good job, and honestly, on a comparative level, the fact that we had our depository system set up at the time for a very nascent market was a big plus. Mr. Mate has always been very passionate about trying to engage in Zambians abroad. From the time I worked for Stockbrokers Zambia, we did reach out to the communities abroad, and at that time actually I remember people like Ambassador Lazarus Kapambwe was based here in New York, and we were trying to get people to invest back home. But then the whole concept of shares, I think, was still not fully understood on both levels, locally and communities in diaspora. I remember locally, we had a situation where people would buy shares without necessarily understanding what it was all about. And I had a situation where, for instance, the people who bought shares in Chilanga, when they realized that at that time Meridian was going under, they panicked, of course, and came back to their respective brokers. We were one of them, and said, look, I just want to get my money out. Their understanding was it was a fixed deposit kind of arrangement where you put your money in and you get out what you put in, but it wasn't like that. And I realized that on a personal level and said, you know what, I think I can help these people by trying to be the market maker. I just found myself in that position because I on a personal level, I didn't want to see these people lose. So I tried to find people in the market who would be interested to at least give the best possible price for those shares.
Okay, no, that's quite interesting, and I think it highlights as well as you pointed out there, the investor. I don't know if awareness is the right word there, where they almost sort of compared shares to a fixed deposit.
Yes, and a lot of, because I couldn't really blame them, because at that time, prior to the stock exchange coming on in 1994, their only frame of reference in terms of investment opportunities was a fixed deposit account, which I referred to as CDs here. So it was difficult to try and tell them that when you buy shares, what you get out may not necessarily be what you put in. It could be lower. So after that initial public offering and experience, when we had the next IPO, it was something that I often brought up to the subscribers before they bought the shares, to try and help them understand that shares are subject to fluctuation. So if you're buying shares in Zambia Sugar or Zambian breweries later on, the share price may go down, but that does not mean that you have to panic and sell. Hold on to your shares for as long as you can, because when you look at the company from a bird's eye perspective, how is it doing? The performance at the time was very good, and it did show that it was likely to continue, improving. So hold on to your shares for as long as you can. So, we had to try and speak in very basic terms. I remember for the Zambia Sugar flotation, we had what was called an employee share ownership plan set up for farmers. So they subscribed, they had the opportunity to buy shares at that time through their ESOP, what was called ESOP, Employee Share Ownership Plan. And, they had some kind of payment plan. It was an incentive to try and help them become shareholders. And I remember driving up to Mazabuka to go and literally talk to these people. So we would explain to them in very basic terms, this is what happens. Fortunately for me, when I was doing my registered representative course, Peter Yui, the late Peter Yui, bless his soul, he was one of the people that trained us. And he said in Kenya, what they do is they have helped farmers, basic people like farmers, understand the benefits of the exchange by explaining that when you think of the company you're buying into as a cow, think of the dividends as the milk, and think of the bonus shares that you get as the cows. So, sometimes it took explaining in very basic terms to help people understand. But in terms of generating interest abroad, you know, we could only really start working on that effectively if we could showcase that it was working locally. So there was a lot of work that needed to be done locally before we could ripple off to the diaspora community abroad.
Okay, no, thank you. That's actually quite insightful. Then following through with that, how do Zambians abroad track their portfolios and market performance?
Okay, so really there are quite a few, because when you buy shares, the share prices rather are shared with you on a daily basis or weekly basis, depending on what your preference is. So on your own, you can actually see, okay, I bought so many shares and this is what the value is. That's one way of doing it manually on your own. Another way is to reach out directly to your broker. But otherwise, nowadays there's so many online platforms you can actually do it on your own. You can literally have your accounts kind of like you can monitor your account on a daily basis just by pretty much following the share prices on the market.
Are there success stories of diaspora-led investments?
To be honest, there are quite a few success stories that have made significant contributions to our economy through investments from the areas of such as agriculture, real estate, mining, and finance. We do have in the real estate space, we do have Zambians that have contributed to the real estate boom in Zambia, particularly the Lusaka and Copperbelt region. So we have several diaspora investors that funded the construction of residential estates, hotels, and commercial properties, right? So an example, specific, we had a group of Zambians based in the UK that invested in what was called the Mukuva Mall in Kitwe. And as you probably know, it's one of Zambia's largest shopping malls. So the project created, jobs and also helped boost the local economy. And then in terms of agriculture, that's another sector that has had significant investment from Zambians, particularly in the form of farming projects and agro-processing and value-added products, that kind of. Privileged last summer to meet a gentleman who's very passionate about agriculture and actually has an initiative, Kuchalo, going on, and has conducted some youth-led conferences in the Western province in conjunction with Dr. Frida Mwamba Bradley. They're both based in Atlanta. And, it's heartwarming to see that people are thinking back home, how can we help? Because areas like agriculture, really, we have the right climate for certain, crops and stuff like that. And so that's already an edge in terms of what we can do. But what we need to do is move it a step further by finding the right prices for those kinds of, products and commodities. And so that's why initiatives like that were created by this group. Hopefully it's still going well. I trust it is. And then there's also a group of Zambians in South Africa that invested in large scale farming, like in the southern part of Zambia. It also provided local employment and also helped improve food security, which contributed to Zambia's agricultural exports. And also in the areas of technology and innovations, we have an example of a tech startup in Zambia that was partly funded by Zambians in diaspora and launched a mobile payment solution. So that helps to facilitate remittances, mobile banking, and providing easy access to financial services to underserved areas. And then in the areas of tourism, which is also an area that I'm also very passionate about, we have Zambians who contributed to the growth of Zambia's tourism sector by setting up lodges, hotels, tourism-related businesses that cater to both local and international tourists. One example is a group of people in Zambians abroad, based in the US specifically, who invested in luxury safari lodge around the lower Zambezi area. It's one of Zambia's prime wildlife and tourism destinations. So the investment also, contributed to the conservation of the local environment.
Yes, no, that answers the question quite well. It's interesting to learn about these developments. Personally, I wasn't aware of many. So going on to the next question, what are some of the concerns of Zambians in the diaspora when it comes to investing in shares via the LuSE?
Okay. Really, I would say some of the key concerns are limited access to information. For instance, Zambians abroad may feel that accessing up-to-date, information that they could work with could be a little challenging. But I feel the stock exchange has done a commendable job through all the general managers that I've worked with, starting from Mr. Mate all the way down to Mr. current general manager, Mr. Nicholas Cavasso. I think, and of course I have to mention Beatrice Nkanza, who was the first female general manager. But I think they've tried, but we're operating in an environment that's demanding real-time transactions. It's so fast paced. So, the challenge is also quite high, but I still do give a lot of credit to how much they're trying to make sure that information is readily accessible and available. And then also language barriers. Information about listed companies on the market itself is not always easy to understand, especially for those that are not familiar with the Zambian financial system. So I guess there's, there have to be some ways we could try and make it relatable. Maybe kind of come up with programs that are specifically targeted to maybe kids in high schools. I actually volunteered at some point for a program for kids in high schools and was impressed that they were helping to teach children about budgeting at a very young age. So if you could bring in maybe the concepts of the exchange and trying to sort of like look at the basic terms, from that early on in life, the kids will grow up knowing that they can look out for opportunities like this at an early age. And hopefully things will change for the better. And then we have the currency exchange and the exchange rate risks. Of course, sometimes the currencies are subject to volatility. And so, as you pointed out earlier, sometimes when one makes investments in Zambian kwacha, they're exposed to currency risk. And the exchange rate between the Zambian kwacha and investors' home currency, such as the US dollar or GDP or the euro, can fluctuate significantly and so affect the overall return on investment. And then we also have the conversion cost element. The converting home currencies into kwacha, for example, can incur high fees, particularly when people are, like trying to set up funds for transfer internationally, because you also have in addition to the unfavorable exchange rates, you also have the cost of transfer, especially if they're using a bank, which can reduce the value of the investment. The beautiful thing about using the bank is, things are done directly from one account to the other. And so it eases up everything in terms of, the settlement process as well. But then it comes with a cost. And that's the downside to it. And then there's also limited access to brokerage services, for example. Even though we have the broker availability, the brokers offer online services. Not all of them kind of like have the opportunity to provide seamless services to international clients. Diaspora investors could face challenges when trying to open brokerage accounts if the brokers don't have clear provisions for foreign clients and if the process is complicated or lengthy. And then we have, under this point, we also have customer support. Investors might experience delays in customer service only because, also of the time difference. And it can be frustrating because some of these issues could arise with trading, withdrawals, and understanding the local market regulations. But there's nothing we can do about the time difference. So, but that has to be, I think, really pointed out and stressed to international investors so that they know exactly what time, they're trying to get people set up on the other side of the earth, so to say. And then the other thing is also regulatory and tax concerns. Zambians may be unsure of the tax implications of investing on the exchange, right? But we also have a situation where all dividends are actually taxed. People probably don't know that. Taxes, dividends, and also the capital gains, So these require the diaspora investors to file taxes for both Zambia and their country of residence. So double taxation treaties could make it unclear for non-existent, make it unclear and add to the complexity of tax situations as well. And then if the regulatory framework is not favorable, it could also affect the investors that want to invest, because they may need to worry about the robustness and also probably enforcement of the laws that govern securities trading in our country, in Zambia, our country, and also try to figure out what the corporate governance protections and transparency areas and terms could be. So that could also lead to a source of concern for them.
Yes, now that answers the question pretty clearly. Then on to the last question. Other countries such as Kenya, Ghana, etc., receive significant inflows from the diaspora. What should we do to create a similar situation for Zambia?
It's a lot of work in progress, obviously, but maybe one place to start would be, if it hasn't, I have a feeling this work could have started, given that there's been recognition to the fact that Zambians in diaspora are considered the 11th province. One way to start would be to help create a dedicated diaspora investment strategy by perhaps developing a comprehensive, clear, and accessible diaspora investment strategy, which would promote the benefits of investing in Zambia. But those are young minds that you could try and attract, because they are, first of all, they in knowing a little bit more about their roots and their culture, but may not have necessarily had the opportunity to travel back home with their parents. So one way to do it would be to try and create an investment strategy specifically targeted at these children of the diasporans in Zambia. And then also, you can also look at diaspora investment campaigns, for instance, where marketing campaigns, both locally and domestically, to try and educate Zambians about what investment opportunities are available in Zambia. And also, and that has been done to a large extent by organizations like the Zambia Development Agency, which is the government agency responsible for promoting investments in Zambia. But you could work together as the capital markets, it's sort of like community, and try to come up, or as the stockbroking firm, to try and create something that will be targeted towards particular groups of people in the diaspora. Diaspora investment forums, the real estate sector has done a good job about trying to really reach to the diaspora community. I've sat on a couple of, virtual meetings where they talk about what they're doing. And I got a chance to see how a real estate company literally came and spoke to the, attendees of the conference, and were able to showcase what they can do for them. So if it's possible to organize maybe an investment forum, maybe periodically, to try and, get Zambians abroad to learn more about what investment opportunities are, to meet local entrepreneurs, maybe work in conjunction with the embassies abroad, I think there's a good chance of trying to get a lot more interest in that regard. And also like, for instance, if you have real estate opportunities, they already have that. They have been doing a good job of trying to tap into, the diaspora community. Pretty much, there's a lot more that can be done. And we've already touched on agriculture. It's something that's already been done, but I think there's a lot more that can be done. And then, of course, continue to strengthen the regulatory and business environment. So Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much for taking time for the interview, Claire.
Thank you so much for having
Thank you. Have a good day.
you too. Thank you. Bye.